Welcome everybody, and it is a pleasure to have you join our V2x, a Roadmap for Saving Lives webinar. It is a pleasure today to welcome our fantastic host. But before I do so, I have a few housekeeping items I would like to go through with you. During the next 1 hour webinar, we will have 2 items on your screen. The first is a Q&A box, which you can use at any time to ask your biggest questions to our panelists. We encourage you to participate in this and ask your questions at any time. Secondly, we will be running some live polls, so we ask that you engage and interact to ensure that we can show some great insights across the industry and the industry voice. So without further ado, we are very much excited for today's discussion. I would like to hand over to Roger Langtop. Roger, over to you.
Thank you very much, Haley. Hello, everyone. My name is Roger Lanto. I am Director of Automotive Connected Mobility with Strategy Analytics, a global research and consulting firm with over 50 years experience, helping clients to improve their business position within the automotive and technology sectors. V2X communications is a revolutionary concept 20 years in the making in the automotive industry. It offers the potential to save millions of lives globally and ultimately contribute essential enabling elements to automated driving. It is useful at this time to take a closer look at what is impeding its path to wider adoption and how those barriers are being overcome. And I think we have just the people to address those concerns. So joining me today to discuss this topic, I have 3 V2X industry leaders. Chris Schreiner is my colleague here at Strategy Analytics, where he heads up our in-vehicle consumer and UX research. He has more than 2 decades experience in UX and human factors research and supports many of the world's largest automotive and tech companies in optimizing their customer and UX strategies. Strategy Analytics is well known within the automotive and mobility sectors for our best-in-class industry research and forecasting, but what is perhaps less well understood is the work that Chris and his team undertake on a proprietary basis with customers, whether it be cutting-edge tools to profile your customers and segment the market, or one-on-one consulting and advice to optimize your user experience. Our bespoke solutions underpin our clients' success. Mike Potts is joining us from Molex. Mike is lead systems architect for the Molex Connected Mobility Solutions. In a career spanning more than 30 years and across many industry verticals, Mike has been responsible for developing, designing, and implementing numerous solutions and standards related to determining time-sensitive data networks. He is an active contributor to and leader of several Ethernet standards alliances and committees. Part of Coke Industry, Molex is a leading innovator in the development of V2X enabler technologies for the vehicle of the future. As the slide shows, Molex isn't just focused on the automotive market. Thanks to the broad reach of the organization, Mike and his team have the opportunity to use technology from many sectors to drive innovation and integration. Also joining this conversation, most appropriately, is Johannes Springer. Johannes is responsible for the 5G automotive program at Deutsche Telekom. He has an extensive background in connected vehicle technologies and has held a range of senior leadership roles related to technology and solutions design within Telecom. He is also highly active within various organizations, including Next Gen Mobile Network and the 5G Automotive Association. So thank you all for joining us today, and let's get into this content. Today's webinar will focus on the challenges and barriers to the success of V2X. So we'd like to understand what you, our audience, thinks are the key issues. I'm going to pass over to Haley, who will introduce our first audience poll.
Thank you, Roger. So to begin, we have a question on the screen here, which is, what is the biggest barrier to the success of V2X? You will see several options in front of you, and we will give you about 20 seconds to give your vote. I can see that we have about 20% of voters so far, so we will give you another 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. So I'm going to share the results on the screen. And before I pass back over, we can see with 44% that infrastructure and coverage challenges has definitely surpassed the rest, with only 3% of something else or don't know. So Roger, some interesting results here, a few mixed percentages, some nearly in a tie. So I will hand back for a discussion.
Yes, in the real world, we'd have to have a runoff to pick a winner here, but clearly there are a broad range of challenges, and I can't think of a better person to speak to at least some of these than Chris. So Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Thanks, Roger. Of course, all of those barriers need to be addressed for V2X to be a success. And of course, I'm going to be a little biased in my answer, being on the consumer side of it. All too often, when we look at the end user with a lot of automotive technologies, historically, user experience issues have inhibited consumer awareness. We've seen poor usability, poor use cases, and all of this has hindered adoption of new tech generally within the automotive industry. And we see this from the first minute that the buyer walks into a dealership. So we've done a lot of research in the past looking at the OEM dealer consumer communication chain. And oftentimes consumers don't know what new tech they get in the car because the dealers have insufficient training, or they're not aware or understanding of what the capabilities are of new technology. And we see and have identified a number of those breakdowns between the OEM and the dealer and the consumer, to where we see instances where, for instance, what the dealers get for training is a YouTube video that's basically marketing material. And that's obviously not sufficient for a lot of these advanced tech features. And then once the consumer drives off the lot with the vehicle, we see issues in terms of poor choices in use cases or poor implementation. So we see, looking at ADAS systems, for instance, L2 highway driving, we've seen highway driving features available on low range battery electric vehicles, and that's not a great use case for that. We see poor implementations in terms of the communication of system status between the driver and the vehicle. We can all remember a few years back with lane departure warnings, how consumers actually went in and found a settings menu, which they never do, to go and try and turn lane departure warnings off because there were too many false alarms and it was too annoying. So we see a lot of these issues where we can put the infrastructure together, we can do great engineering work, but if that end user experience isn't there, then this tech isn't going to be successful.
So it looks like you're suggesting part of the story here is related to enabling automated driving capabilities. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So what are these compelling use cases that Chris is referring to? Johannes, what do you think?
I think, you know, what is very often connected with the whole V2X is the safety, increased safety of the vehicle and of the whole driving experience, as Chris has described. And if it comes to safety, you know, the journey has been already started. So we have this Act 1 inform principle invented nearly 20 years ago, and every customer understands that if he gets safety-related information in advance so that he can adapt its behavior, it's of course beneficial. Yeah? If he gets warning inside the vehicle so that he can react directly, or can maybe also the vehicle can take over direction in terms of V2I and V2V, it increases even more the safety benefits. And if he buys for some sensors, as Chris has described, these lane keeping or automated distance warnings and all these kind of things, of course, the driver understands that this will increase safety. But the car gets all these kind of information out of a variety of sensors, and V2X is, of course, one part of the sensor. So it needs to be included of an overall compelling selling story to the customer with regard to safety.
So if I want to be, as a consumer, in the best position to avoid an unpleasant experience on the road, I should care about V2X technology. That's what I'm hearing, Johannes. So
you should care about the the feature of safety, but you would never care about V2X as such, because V2X is not the compelling selling proposition. It's increased safety, and that is needed to be sold.
Yes, the application, not the jargon. So
Exactly.
can you delve deeper for us, Mike? Talk us through a specific example, if you will.
Sure, thanks, Roger. So first of all, I'd like to say, as an automotive tier 1 supplier and developer, Molex truly believes in the safety benefits of V2X. And we're committed in the development and implementation of these technologies required to support it. And there's many technologies to support it. From my standpoint, I have a personal motivation use case, which fuels my passion as far as V2X. And as I revealed, and I'd like to share that with you, as I revealed last February, or this past February in Automotive Ethernet Congress presentation, it's been about 5 years since my young 18-year-old son, Stefan, spent 13 days in the hospital with a open head injury before he became what I call our angel. And with his massive head injuries, as far as fighting for his life, it was later determined that this accident was really no fault of Stefan's. It was caused by black ice on the road. And here's my point to the conversation. And it was on a curved road, which led to the impact of him losing control and slamming into a telephone pole. So in my opinion, the black ice conditions that had it also previously subsequently caused several less severe accidents that same day. Black ice conditions that I believe could have been detected and warnings given to not only Stefan, but the other drivers that were involved in the accidents to avoid this situation, and perhaps would have possibly saved my son's life. So in my point of view, it's kind of a no-brainer. As a father, public consumer, like Chris had said, of vehicles, and a technical subject matter expert on V2X and the enabling technologies to support that, it does seem to me we should move forward to support the continued development, implementation, and consumer demand of these technologies at whatever monetary cost is needed. And again, I thank you for that, allowing me to share that story and the story behind my passion as far as the use case as that's concerned.
Well, and I'd want to get those warning messages, and I would rather not have to wait for the DOT or some other agency or application to deliver that information to me after going through various filters. I'd want that communicated directly. So, Chris, what are your thoughts about that and other applications?
Well, Mike's situation there, I mean, that's a real key use case that I think resonates with everybody and will certainly resonate with consumers. It's those types of safety applications there that would need to be communicated, and I think will really grasp with consumers. We've done a lot of research over the years looking at what's important to consumers when they're purchasing a new vehicle. And we've seen safety ADAS services rise up the rankings in that over the past several years. It's become a very important topic when consumers walk into that dealership. We've also looked at interest in various use cases that are brought about by 5G. Of course, 5G is a key enabler of V2X. And when we've talked to consumers about 5G use cases anywhere on their smartphone, in their smart home, smart speaker, on any device, some of the top use cases that we find that consumers really gravitate to are these types of V2X use cases. We look at things like congestion platooning, or better automated emergency braking, or the black ice use case. Those are very high just overall in terms of what makes consumers get excited about 5G. Of course, for each OEM, each vehicle, each use case, each situation, we have to look a bit deeper into the target demographics of that vehicle. And that's some of the work that we are doing, that we continually do with OEMs, looking at, for their specific vehicle, their specific use case, and their specific target demographics, what use cases really resonate with consumers for V2X and other areas, and how to best communicate that to them.
Mike, do you have another example for us? Because certainly we've been hearing about black ice, I would say, for all those 20 years that V2X technology has been in development. What's another use case scenario?
Yeah, so I do, Roger. Thank you. So the use case I have is basically braking, and the facts behind a braking example. And what it is basically, as is shown by the slide here, the human factor for driving, and essentially that's what autonomous is looking to replace, okay, and some of these technologies to support the autonomous driving. The human factor for driving reactions to the ecosystem is about 90% based on visual stimulus, which requires the brain about 13 milliseconds, and I'm getting a little geeky here, 13 milliseconds to process. And even at that level, it's about 21% inaccurate, okay, as far as the rate from which it processes that information and the action that human brain initiates to create. So the current human plus the vehicle response system in a vehicle typically ranges from about 500 to 1500 or 1.5 seconds, okay, 500 milliseconds to 1500 milliseconds. So I had about 120 kilometers per hour, which in the US standards, 75 miles per hour. Vehicle travels about 51 meters or about 170 feet before coming to a complete stop, or being able to stop for collision avoidance. So to put that distance in perspective, it's about 10 feet shy of the length, half of the length of a soccer field, a full professional soccer or football field. So a lot of bad things can happen in that amount of time. So in my point of view, this is why advanced detection and warning info supplied by technologies like 5G, V2X is needed for the collision avoidance.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about some of the technical complexities involved. But first of all, let's again see what the audience has to say about this. So, Haley?
Thank you, Roger. So our second poll of today is, within what time frame do you expect any V2X technology to see standard fitment in cars within major markets? We have within 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 plus years, or you don't know or no opinion. So we will give everybody about 10 more seconds to vote. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to share those results on the screen now with you. So we can see actually 50% was within 5 to 10 years, 37% within 5 years. Roger, I'll hand back to you with those results.
Okay, we're going to send you 5 to 10 year responders to the naughty chair. We definitely need this technology more rapidly deployed than that. But we are trying to be realistic here. We can't ignore the challenges and the realities that we're facing. So, Mike, in order for V2X to reach critical mass, to get to the market faster, a number of technical challenges still need to be resolved. Can you talk to us a bit about these and how Molex is addressing them?
Sure, thanks, Roger. So there are various technical challenges to support V2X, and including HPGNSS integration, Wi-Fi DSRC integration, wireless C2V2X, and the use of in-vehicle network sensing and processing, as well as the use of back office type of AI type of support. So in the screen that's shown basically shows a lot of the technology as far as communication and a lot of arrows there, okay? But in my opinion, to simplify this, the technologies support 4 different key elements as far as the V2X proposition. The first is providing an accurate street view. So use of different sensors like IMUs, cameras, LiDARs, and radars, as well as standalone 802.11 vehicle standalone 802.11p DSRC or CV2X LTE PC5 sidelink, direct sidelink mode 4 technologies, which was recently agreed to quickly and redundantly communicate with other vehicles and infrastructure elements in close proximity to the actual vehicle itself. Okay, so I call that the accurate street view. Second thing is probably in my opinion, is the most important key element required, and that's providing an accurate vehicle positioning of the vehicle or other objects or obstructions. So in my point, like I said, in my point of view, it's the most important key element required and through the use of HP or high definition or high precision GNSS, and also allowing for things like the private satellites that are put into lower orbital space to provide different L-band cellular communications for real-time correction services to that, or correction services basically to the base stations as well too. And then third element is ASIL rated. So many of the OEMs that we're working with and a lot of requirements we're seeing is the technology in the vehicle to support this. They're looking this to be from an ASIL B as in boy to an ASIL D level because they recognize that this to be such a critical element. And so there's a lot of challenges to get those components to that type of level. And then also the communication components to be able to provide the real-time correction. And the base stations has an opportunity to do some of the real-time correction. And then lastly, some of the challenges too is the identification of additional coordinating or compatible enabling technology factors. Like for example, Molex is #1 leader in distributed or antenna solutions for the OEMs. And we're looking at the addition of the distributed placement of the antennas in the vehicles to better aid in the identification of impeding or hidden objects around the vehicle, or even communication of to the 5G or satellite type of systems as well too, in case of there's some obstructions of those antennas. And then also the support for consumer. A major thing that we keep forgetting is also the integration and support in consume by technology to upload or give the information concerning a V2P or V2I type of information. So these are a few things, but again, I think one of the biggest things here impeding that is not only technology, is basically the integration of a business case on this as well too.
If I can ask to go to the forecast slide, which I skipped over. Thank you. So while our respondents to the survey expect a 5 to 10 year delay, the strategy analytics forecast is perhaps looking at something a little bit more aggressive, perhaps not standard fitment, but we are seeing a rapid near parabolic rate of adoption for V2X technologies, and obviously coming from multiple vectors, whether it's DSRC or cellular in the car. So thank you for going back to that. Mike, do you have any thought on this kind of adoption outlook?
I totally agree with you. I know working with the ODMs and things like that, the adoption is much faster than the 5 to 10 years. And again, we're looking within the 5-year adoption periods. Okay. Yes.
And now that topic you just addressed is a pretty critical one. If we can go back to that last slide, delivering a safe and redundant, comprehensive contextual awareness to the driver. You know, I look at it as kind of empowering to that driver, but what we're talking about and really focusing in on here is the accuracy of positioning. Some might ask why it's needed when the vehicle already has an HD map on board. So what is it about positioning that is so important?
Yeah, good question, Roger. So having the knowledge, I think everyone can agree here, having the knowledge of the exact location of the vehicle or object that needs to be avoided at a specific common basis of time allows for the operator or autonomous vehicle, the opportunity to take the appropriate actions required to avoid the fault. And again, the thing that I'm stressing here is the common basis of time, okay, as well too. And in most of today's low to mid content production vehicles, which account for a majority of the vehicles on the road today, there are positioning accuracy and their positioning accuracy and moment-to-moment dynamic change limitations are reflective because of the use of the map data and the limited availability of and use of the sensor fusion applications that are are within those vehicles today. So this coupled with the presence of, this inaccuracy coupled with the presence of adverse environmental conditions, which essentially reduces the effectiveness of many of the sensors, begs for the need for the use of 5G C-V2X communication with the real-time correction. And again, it's a technology that allows for real-time context and more time for the vehicle to correct, use the corrective actions.
Yeah, as I look at this, to me, it's the real revolutionary aspect that's hitting our industry is this coming together of core safety requirements with wireless cellular connectivity. So, Johannes, can you speak to that a little bit in the context of this positioning conversation?
I think this example shows very well, also in conjunction with a use case Mike has earlier described about black ice warning, that these two technologies in combination are creating a lot of benefits for the customer. So assume the first vehicle is 1 kilometer away from the fourth following vehicle and detects a black ice situation because of its sensors, inbuilt sensors. And this information is distributed via the network to the fourth following vehicle. Of course, this vehicle can adapt its behavior accordingly. And that's a big benefit immediately for the customer if this information is made available. If the vehicle is only 200, 300 meters far away, the information can be distributed directly between the vehicles in that C-V2X channel in a direct communication mode. And this increases even more the benefit of this information because it can also be distributed regardless of the network availability or not. So this shows in combination with the explanation of a use case that the combination of cellular connectivity and direct connectivity proposed by C-V2X can generate a big value for the customer. And of course, you can adapt this type of use case behavior to a variety of other warning situations like the black ice, of course, like heavy rains or like fire alarms or whatever type of solution, whatever type of hazards you have on the road. Coming back to that one specific point, what Mike has mentioned with regard to the positioning accuracy of the vehicle, of course, that is very important. The more the vehicles are communicating with each other and need to negotiate about a cooperative action. Because if they want to cooperate with each other, they need to rely completely on the information of the other vehicle. So it is also a matter of trust, whether I am, as the vehicle which is receiving information, gets this information on a trustworthy information channel, and whether I can trust this information in terms of data quality. And of course, the position of the vehicle and the position of the sensoric information is a very important data item according to that.
So it seems that between the technical expertise of companies like Molex and investment from OEMs and telcos, there's so much effort being brought to bear to push V2X. So why do we still have so little commercial activity after nearly 20 years of development? Johannes, can you talk to us a bit about the historical development of V2X that has led to this situation?
Now, from my perspective from a telco operator, what we saw since, I would say, 10 years is definitely a lack of cooperation between the various industries. And we have at least 3 industries which need to come very closely together, which need to align very closely together. And these are, of course, the car manufacturers who are developing and selling the vehicles. These are definitely the road operators who are caring not only for the road infrastructure, but also they need to care for other road participants, traffic participants like pedestrians, like cyclists. So if you go, for instance, to accidents, to road safety, a lot of accidents, specifically in the cities, are related to the ones who are not sitting in the vehicle. So the pedestrians, the cyclists. So if we talk about road safety, we cannot ignore this big challenge of including also the other traffic participants. And finally, we need to take care, we need to include the telco operators because they are providing the networks where all this kind of information is distributed. And of course, they are investing, as you have said, Roger, heavily into infrastructure, and infrastructure investments are one of the big issues, what we have seen also from the poll, which we need to overcome.
Chris, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, and then from the consumer point of view, what will continue to hinder adoption is, for a lot of these V2X use cases, to get consumers to adopt them, we have to have enough vehicles that have V2X capabilities within it. So if I'm going to the dealership to buy a vehicle and they're like, hey, great, you can get this great safety technology that communicates to other cars that have the technology, and you will say, well, how many have them? And they'll say, well, not many right now, but they will. Well, I'll wait until they all have it in order to get that immediate benefit. I think you've described it one time, Roger, as what we have right now is one hand clapping, where we have few vehicles that talk to either the same brand, the same model, or maybe there are some partnerships between OEMs where they might talk to the other OEM, or the one specific technology talks to car with the same tech. There isn't enough critical mass out there for a consumer to experience the benefits of V2X at this point. So we need to get to that rate of adoption, but in order to do that, the consumer needs to have, until these features are standardized, they need to have some motivation to go to that up-level trim or go to that particular model that has the V2X features. So we need to have some use cases available to them that might not rely on other vehicles having the technology at this point.
So Johannes, what do you think about the carrier role in this? Because in the future, beginning very soon, vehicle connectivity that's built into the car will come with V2X technology. It will just be there. How is that going to maybe change this conversation that Chris is talking about?
You know, as telco carriers, you know, normally we are connecting people and we are not connecting things. Yeah? So we are by nature somebody who is mediating ecosystems, and that is definitely one of our big roles here. Secondly, the whole thing has a prerequisite when it comes to cellular networks, that the network is there. So a lot of network operators are spending huge amount of their CapEx investments into providing coverage, not only alongside the road networks, but also for other areas. So coverage is definitely a second very important.
Let me ask you, let me drill down a little bit on that coverage question. Is it a little different this time around with regard to that investment in infrastructure? Because everybody has that experience of, you know, they know their favorite dead zone, and some countries are notorious. They will remain nameless. But is it different with 5G? We're getting a better infrastructure, better coverage.
That's not a matter of technology. Definitely, that's definitely a matter of regulation. That's clear. It's also a matter of availability of spectrum. You know, spectrum is a very important source for every mobile network operator. There's more spectrum is available also for rural coverage. So low band spectrum, that is very important for us to create coverage with a reasonable amount of effort, also for these regions. So that is also important. But I want to also mention a third point, which is from my point of view very often underestimated, and that is, if we are building our network infrastructure, of course we need to collaborate with the road operators, yeah, because we need poles, we need masts, we need all these kind of fiber, electricity, and so on and so forth. And the road operators are owners of these type of resources very often.
Please tell me that is happening, Johannes.
So if we can, yeah, there are a lot of good and very reasonable sharing principles between road operators, which are very often public authorities and mobile network operators. From a mobile network operator, very often we are talking about street furniture. Yeah, that's our terminology we are using to reuse some physical infrastructure from the road operators. And the better the cooperation between these two industries can be organized, yeah, the more we can minimize our efforts, and that creates at the end better coverage situations alongside road networks.
So Mike, maybe there's an opportunity for short-term benefits that could be explained to the consumer. Does anything come to mind in terms of short-term benefits? The long-term benefits seem pretty clear.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting as far as V2X, there's many different business cases as far as short term that are driving us, and that's basically communication, whether it be faster communication, faster bandwidth. So whether it be a consumer using, say, Netflix, requiring Netflix or some kind of communication on the backside, so there's some, those are the consumer use is basically a lot of the short-term benefits, as well as from an OEM standpoint too. There's a lot of benefits from their standpoint as far as being able to diagnose the vehicle or getting information from the vehicle or pushing new updates to the vehicle in response to the consumer needs. So there are a lot of short-term that are requiring this type of technology. From a safety standpoint too, again, I think the idea of the positioning of the vehicle and everything offers a lot of opportunity to be able to control as far as some of the ecosystem dilemmas that we are actually currently having as far as avoidance of collisions and different things like that. So,
my pet favorite is infrastructure to vehicle communications. Is that a potential short-term benefit?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a short-term benefit.
Okay.
You know, yes.
We're getting a lot of questions coming in, by the way, so I'm going to try to speed things along here. Johannes, did you want to say something about perhaps short-term benefits from V2X?
You know, we have already the short-term benefits. You know, so millions of vehicles like BMW, Daimler, Volvo cars, they are measuring already hazards on the road. They are distributing these hazards. They're exchanging, by the way, also between the car manufacturers their information, and they're making a very nice services out of it. And of course, what Chris has clearly said, the more vehicles are participating in these type of data sharing principles, the better the service quality and the service validity will be for the customer. So I would not say the whole thing will be relevant for the customer in 5 years. No, the journey has been already started, and it will improve continuously over time. The more vehicles are participating, and that is very important, the more information is shared in a direct communication manner, directly between the vehicles. So from vehicle to vehicle, from vehicle to infrastructure. And the nice thing from cellular vehicle to X is that this combination of direct communication on the one hand side and cellular communication on the other hand is reflected in the technology.
Chris, any quick comment?
Yeah, I'm with you, Roger, on the infrastructure to vehicle being the first step of this, because again, that's what's going to get the consumer, if they see a compelling use case, to adopt this now to help this get up to that critical mass. So things like intelligent intersection management, you know, those types of use cases, if they can work with the infrastructure and local municipalities to get that information, I think those are good first step use cases that can bring up adoption to where some of the more V2V and other V2X use cases that we've talked about earlier could then become reality.
Yeah, there was just a study released showing we hit a new high in pedestrian fatalities in 2018. So maybe notifying cars of people in the crosswalk. So Johannes, any quick comment on who's going to solve this infrastructure problem? You've already made several comments about the infrastructure situation, but maybe something sort of summing up where we're at and maybe if, you know, how we might turn that corner.
As I said, you know, infrastructure needs investments, and also what Chris has said, of course, an infrastructure would create an immediate customer benefit, but a car manufacturer would only introduce a certain piece of service into the vehicle if there's not only one intersection equipped. So again, we need some sort of equipment rate or penetration rate of equipped intersection in the field, unless it makes no sense. And maybe also it would more confuse the customer, the driver, because sometimes he gets the information, sometimes the service is not available, so it creates a lot of confusion. But as I said, the mobile network operators, they need to spend a lot of money into their expenditure of the mobile network operation, and the car and the road operators, they need to spend also money. So there are a lot of investment synergies, I assume, and we can see this more and more. The better the collaboration between the network operators and road operators is organized.
So Johannes identified BMW, Mercedes, and Volvo as leaders in the space. I would have to add General Motors and Toyota, but can I tease you into identifying any OEM that's a leader in this V2X conversation, Mike?
Sure. Molex dealing with all the OEMs, or majority of the OEMs. I think there are a few clear leaders in the implementation.
Come on,
of this.
break your NDAs. Come on, clap it up.
And again, I got to once say, even the OEMs that have made the commitment as far as the direction to DSRC, okay, as far as their infrastructure, they are heavily involved as far as looking at the implementation of 5G and C-V2X technology as well too. And many of these are well down the line as far as the implementation of that within their vehicles. So a few of those are like GM, VW, and Ford, with the recent announcements, have made commitments to those as well too. So there are leaders, and there are definitely followers, like any technology, and a few of those leaders are the people that we've mentioned.
Yeah, I would have to add VW and Ford to my list as well, and any automaker in China, because C-V2X is coming pretty fast. Chris, any comment on OEM activity here?
I think, like I said earlier, the ones that we've seen that are out there now, from Audi, BMW, Daimler, some of those are technically V to cloud to V rather than V to X, but they end up having a limited ecosystem and require a lot of dealer training, consumer training, which I talked about being an issue earlier. But what I don't want to forget in all of this is what that end result looks like to the driver, because that is one of the key elements. As we've seen, L2 systems, highway driving, traffic jam assist, all of these advanced ADAS systems coming out and struggling with adoption and usage and awareness. A lot of that has to come with what that end experience is like to the driver. And while the engineering can be great, if the driver doesn't know how to activate the system, or doesn't understand what the message is that they're getting from this feature, then it's never going to meet its potential. And we've seen too many times poor HMI in terms of subtle alerts, or alerts that sound like other alerts. They don't know what that particular alert means. Confusing messages to the driver, systems that are too distracting or annoying, or too many false alarms. All of those issues that have to do with communicating these types of dangerous situations, what the driver is supposed to do in a limited amount of time. That's something that needs a lot of focus, and that's something that we're working with OEMs on our end to help them design on a custom basis some of their V2X and advanced ADAS solutions.
Well, I think I know an industry analyst who's going to be very busy helping clients solve these problems. So thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts and your inputs today. Just before we get to the audience questions, I want to let you know about a free report that SA and Molex have put together on V2X. You can download the report here. It goes into extensive detail in terms of user experience insights, our forecast, and our thoughts about that forecast, and market adoption, as well as Molex's solution for addressing this issue. So we have a reasonable amount of time left here, so please don't fail to download that report. But we have some time left here, so we'd like to take some questions from the audience, and I'm going to lean a little bit on Haley selecting these questions. So let's see. I have them on the screen in front of me. So I'm hearing of a stall in V2X adoption due to a delay in level 4, level 5 autonomy. What, in your opinion, are the levers to promote adoption of V2X in the meantime? So what's going to get us through in the meantime if some other application area is stalled out? Mike, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so again, You know, I don't think it's necessarily have to be all the way at a level 4, level 5 autonomy type of vehicle as far as it's installed. I mean, you're seeing a lot of the vehicles as far as a level 3 plus and even down to a level 2 with the adoption of V2X and communication technologies like 5G and DSRC to promote some of the applications on that. So again, I don't think it's relative to just level 4 and level 5 full autonomy type of vehicles. So as far as the things that promote the adoption, again, we mentioned a few of these on the conference. Again, safety is a huge, huge element of that. And then as Kristen mentioned, and Roger, you mentioned as well too, is infrastructure to vehicle communication to the adoption of that.
Where are the key areas of investment that may be lagging to make sure, whoops, people are just asking too many questions, that may be lagging to make sure this happens within the next 5 years. So how do we get to a sub 5-year broad deployment? Mike, what are your thoughts about that?
Again, I think it's, you know, from a technology standpoint, I think that there's a few obstacles as far as making it a worldwide common type of architecture as opposed to independent country-based architectures, or some of the things is relative to frequency and spectrum bands being used. But again, there's enough out there in the architecture world to actually, or the technology world to actually start implementing this technology very, very soon. And as Johannes pointed out, a lot of this technology is not about when, it's about, you know, it's being implemented and how it's going to be used. So I think a lot of this has to do with more of a business drivers. And again, as the technology is implemented too, there's going to be more increased accuracy and more requirements as far as the business drivers requiring the various different telcos and things like that to, I'm going to say, pony up as far as being able to support this as well too.
And I see a retiree here with too much time on his hands, Holger Meinl. So how does that work with corporate idea of OEMs or telecoms? Who might organize something like standardization? So Johannes, I want to ask you, since you're connected to 5G AA and standards activities.
The industry is organizing the standardization. So that's the car manufacturers like SAE, that this is of course the whole telco industry with 3GPP. And
but how is the cooperation among the OEMs and the telecom companies? Is it really there? I mean, the 5G AA looks good, but is it really happening?
Of course it's growing. It's a big effort. It's also a big challenge. It's still challenging, but this cooperation is still growing. That was one of the fundamentals of founding the 5G AA 4 years ago. So all the big car manufacturers around the globe are working together to create an ecosystem where these type of data sharing principles can be organized. Of course, they need investment. And there was one question earlier, where shall I invest? And of course, it's not that much an investment into technology. Yes, the technology part is also important, but it is also investment into cooperation between the various parties involved on the road.
And while I have you responding, please, can you talk about the business model adopted by the mobile operators for V2I or I2V use cases? You know, a lot of people express skepticism. Oh, the carriers will never deploy a technology that they can't charge something for. So what is the business model?
Of course, you know, the business model comes from the one hand side from our private customer base, because also the private customers are creating a huge and important customer base. We have a lot of aftermarket devices in the vehicle, so it's not only always the car manufacturers directly. It's of course also the car manufacturers in B2B relations, but it's also the road operators, because the road operators perceive more and more and understand more and more that they can, if they distribute their information which is available on the road to the variety of traffic participants, and as I said, not only the cars, but also the cyclists, also the pedestrians.
But
the traffic can be organized.
But is there a business model for the carriers? You see what the question is trying to get at?
You know, at the end, our services, our mobile network services are consumed. So it's always, you know, we are creating higher bandwidth needs. We are creating latency requests and latency requirements, and we can create business models out of that. I'm pretty sure. And we see this in a variety of business cases today, and I'm pretty sure that there are also very much more to come.
And Mike, this is a kind of a technical question about antenna placement and type of antenna. So what's the best location? Which antenna element may be useful, patch antenna or other? How many antennas are required? You know, because it's a multiple MIMO kind of an application. How complex and how much of a challenge is the antenna proposition?
Yeah, good question. So the antenna proposition is very complex as far as the placement and actually the communication of the once they are distributed, the communication of the antennas back to, say, a stitching type of device, a modem stitching type of device that can bring in all those different signals to provide, say, a MIMO-like type of operation based on, you know, the actual communication availability. So currently, again, you know, we place most of our antennas on the roof because the coverage is greater as far as on the roof, or you know, we have the shark fin type of antennas, things like that. But as the need is to integrate all these other technologies, whether it be an 802 street view type of technologies, whether it be Wi-Fi or even a 5G for like Sidelink, or even things like to support see-through type of technologies as well too. You know, there may be obstructions on the roof, and there may be need for at a lower level to distribute these type of antennas as well too. So we're looking at you know, as far as the number, how many, not sure. I think as far as the distribution of the antennas, like the sensors, we're looking at the distribution of antennas, both to be in the front, the rear, and also the roof if possible. And again, a lot of this has to do with ergonomics of the vehicle as well too, you know, as far as from an OEM desire too.
And while I've got you, is there an aftermarket path to bringing V2X technology to cars, or is that not going to work?
I believe there's, you know, we haven't really looked at that, but I believe there would be an opportunity to do that. But again, because the V2X is so integrated with a lot of the applications that are built within the vehicle, and you know, to provide these different, you know, integration as far as sensor fusion, maybe e-calling or different things like that. You know, I don't know how cost effective from a business case it would be able to implement that. But yes, I'm sure there could be an opportunity to, as a third source to bring that technology into a vehicle.
Here's a little bit of a jump ball for either of you. Satellite positioning is unlikely to provide required accuracy in urban conditions, even when supported with augmentation systems like SBAS. Do you think that instead vehicles will have to rely on local perception combined with HD maps? Do you think this could delay V2X adoption until those HD maps are available? I think maybe, Johannes, this one is for you because the network may play an important role here in urban canyons.
Yeah, the network plays an important role to distribute correction information, but of course the question is completely right. It's a challenging task in urban canyons, but you know, positioning is in any case not a single technology topic. It's always a combination of various technologies, and it depends always on the various situations the vehicle is driving. So if you are driving through a parking garage, of course the satellite is not available, so you need to rely on other positioning technologies. And then you have also, in addition, Wi-Fi technologies, and you have, of course, the in-car sensors where you can position yourself in a relative positioning manner. So, you know, positioning never relies only on one specific technology.
Right. And to add to that real quickly, Roger. So like I alluded to, it's basically not a contradictory, or they're basically compatible solutions. And the need that we're seeing is an integration of all these solutions into, say, antenna-based solutions, into TCU type of solutions. And so integrate, so like Johannes said, and totally agree, there isn't the reliance on just one technology, one communication technology. And again, it gets back to the need for an ASIL type of compliance requirement for this technology.
And we couldn't possibly get through the Q&A without having a question on security. So can you comment on the security aspect of V2X? Who should be the certificate authority? Government, private sector? How do you update the keys of all vehicles in case of a security breach?
Good question. Very good question. I'm on the fence as far as what, again, the vehicles today is basically authentication or manager or store is controlled primarily from the individual OEMs or companies today. As far as the total communication solution amongst all these vehicles, that's a good question. I'd have to think more about that question, but I think there has to be some commonality as far as authentication store. Again, that particular communication has to be authenticated before it actually comes into the vehicle, okay? And how that authentication done, or how that is also firewalled or using like an IPS or IDS type of detection methods is an interesting a cooperative effort. And again, as we move forward in things like even a common effort as far as the common diagnostic efforts and things like that too, that this is one difficult topic that needs to be addressed, yes.
Any quick thought on that, Johannes? I'm sure you've been in many high-level conversations on this subject.
No, not only high-level conversation, as I can tell you. No, honestly, the update of the security credentials needs to be made via the network, and if the car switch on, then of course he needs to ask whether there are some updates needed, and this is permanently made and performed via the network. And of course, the car manufacturer, the operator of the vehicle, needs to make sure that these updates are maintained properly. Yeah, that's of course very important.
So public or private sector?
The private sector needs to make sure. The public sector, the sector needs to make the right framework, but the private sector needs to maintain the update. That's clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can do two more quick questions.
Roger, before you go ahead, there's some people talking about the report that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
I just want to let everyone know that they will get an email in follow-up with the direct download link if they're having issues downloading the report right now.
Okay.
I think everybody jumping over there is crashing our servers. So.
Good to know. So almost near the end here, or we are at the near the end. Yeah. Okay. So what percentage of intersections need to be covered to make it attractive to automotive OEMs? Anybody?
It depends not on an overall percentage value, but if you would provide a certain coverage within a city, that would be completely sufficient, because the customer would experience in that city a certain benefit, and that's an important message. So because we have a big audience from the US, so go for instance to Alpharetta, go to Atlanta, Georgia. There you can see a lot of good examples about a significant percentage of intersections which are equipped and which are generating directly a benefit.
Okay, and I would be remiss if we didn't get a question on this particular subject, and this will be the last question. The VW Mark 8 Golf recently launched with DSRC V2X. That appears a brave choice given the apparent lack of both DSRC infrastructure to support V2I in typical Golf markets and the lack of other DSRC V2X vehicles. Is this first mover advantage or a potential dead end? Is this a bold move that will endure, or will this somehow peter out? What do you gentlemen think?
Well, personally, I think that the decision had to be made based on the communication to their own vehicles and support for DSRC. Okay, and I think there's a business case that VW is using to support that as well too. Will it endure? Absolutely. I think DSRC I think there's a place for 802.11p support for DSRC, as well as 5G C-V2X technology, wireless technology as well too. Again, there has to be, in my opinion, it's a compatibility, not a comparability. Okay.
Johannes, any quick thought as that is our last question?
Of course, it's a bold statement. It was also a very tough decision. And now it's a question how to bring the two technologies together in a way that the information which is available in one vehicle can be shared by the other. And again, the network will play a very important role of managing this exchange of information.
Thank you very much again, gentlemen, for taking on those questions. So to sum up, you need the support of experts from companies like Molex who really understand how to overcome the technical challenges of vehicle connectivity from sensor to cloud, as well as partner with an organization like Strategy Analytics, who have both the domain expertise and the methodological expertise to understand the end customer value proposition and help you create the optimal solution. And of course, you need the cooperation of telecom experts like Deutsche Telekom and T-Systems. So thank you to all of our panelists finally, and to our audience for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.